I thought today would just be awkward. But when everyone started laughing at my swollen belly, I realized this was a whole new level of humiliation. I tugged my black button-up shirt down, hoping it might somehow hide my pregnancy bump. But it was useless. "Look at that male omega," someone whispered loud enough for me to hear. "Pregnant and alone at a wedding? Disgusting. My name is Cade, and yes, I'm a pregnant male omega. 6 months along. And the alpha who gave me this? He's not here. He never will be. I only attended this wedding because my best friend Milo begged me to come. But now I was drowning in regret. This was a high society event, and I stuck out like a sore thumb. Surrounded by designer suits and expensive cologne, my thrift store dress pants screamed poverty. But the most embarrassing part? My belly. Without an alpha by my side. Society already judges male omegas harshly, but a pregnant male omega? That's practically a circus act in their eye. I hid in the back row of the church, trying to ignore the discomfort radiating through my lower back, when I saw him. The groom. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair styled to perfection and that commanding presence every alpha seems to possess naturally. But his eyes, they were gentle. They found me, and for one impossible second, time stopped. I quickly looked down. This wasn't my moment. This was his wedding. I was only here because Milo insisted I needed to get out of the shelter for a few hours. The music started. The bride would be coming soon. Everyone stood, but I didn't. My back ached too much, and my ankles had swollen to twice their normal size. Standing for long periods had become torture. Then suddenly, a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. I lifted my head and saw the groom stepping down from the altar. He was walking toward me, straight down the aisle in my direction. "What's he doing?" someone hissed in confusion. Panic flooded through me. Should I stand? Should I run? But he was already there, his imposing figure blocking the view of everyone behind me. His dark eyes locked onto mine, intense and impossible to read. "You're the one," he said softly, like he was confirming something he already knew. Confusion hit me like a wave, and my heart started racing. I don't understand." "Come with me." He extended his hand, palm open and waiting. I couldn't speak. The entire church was filled with shocked faces. The bride would be entering any moment. The music was still playing, and this alpha, he was stopping his own wedding to offer me his hand. None of this made sense. I glanced once at Milo, who looked equally shocked, his mouth hanging open. "I can't just," I started, but he took my hand anyway, warm and firm. "Trust me," he said, his voice somehow both commanding and gentle. "You don't belong in the back row, Cade." How did he know my name? My thoughts blurred together, and then in front of the entire church, he announced, "This wedding is over." Gasps and whispers exploded like fireworks. I stood frozen, his hand still holding mine, as everything descended into chaos. The guests erupted into confused chatter. Some stood abruptly, knocking their programs to the floor. Others remained seated, too stunned to move. I could hear fragments of conversations. "Is this some kind of joke? Who is that boy? This is outrageous." My face burned with embarrassment, but the alpha's grip on my hand never wavered. If anything, he held on tighter, as if anchoring me to this surreal moment. The bride's father pushed through the crowd, his face turning an alarming shade of red. "What is the meaning of this?" he shouted, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "You're humiliating my daughter." But the alpha, I still didn't know his name, remained perfectly calm. "This arrangement was never my choice," he said clearly, projecting his voice so everyone could hear. "I won't marry someone I don't love. I never will." Arrangement. So this had been a forced marriage. That explained the tension I'd noticed when I first saw him at the altar, the way his shoulders had been rigid, his jaw clenched. But even knowing that, I still couldn't understand where I fit into any of this. I was just a pregnant male omega he'd never met before. At least I didn't remember meeting him. The heavy church doors swung open, and the bride entered. Her white gown was absolutely perfect, flowing behind her like something from a fairy tale. But when she saw the scene before her, her groom standing in the aisle, holding hands with a pregnant boy, all the guests in chaos, she froze completely. Her eyes found mine, then dropped to my belly, which was clearly visible beneath my shirt. Something flickered across her face. Recognition. She knew me? How was that possible? "Of course," she said with a bitter smile. her voice cutting through the noise. You choose the pregnant boy over me. How predictable. Pregnant boy. Those words stabbed into my chest like a knife. Yes, I was a boy, a male omega, at the bottom of society's hierarchy. And pregnant male omegas, we were treated like freaks, like mistakes that shouldn't exist. I instinctively tried to pull my hand from the alpha's grip, but he held on tighter, refusing to let go. Don't listen to her, he murmured quietly, meant only for me. But I'd already heard it. And wasn't she right? I was broken, pregnant, alone, jobless, a male omega with nothing to offer. Why would anyone choose me? This had to be some elaborate prank. Or maybe this alpha had lost his mind. Yet he turned to address the entire church, his voice carrying that distinctive alpha command, dominant and absolute. If anyone has a problem with my decision, you're free to leave. Otherwise, show some respect. Security guards began moving through the pews. Guests whispered frantically to each other, shocked and scandalized as they slowly filed toward the exits. The bride's family stormed out, the bride herself in tears, her father shouting threats about lawsuits and consequences. Within minutes, the church had nearly emptied. Only the alpha and I remained standing there, his hands still clasped around mine, with a few confused friends lingering uncertainly in the background. Why me? I finally managed to ask when a moment of quiet settled, my voice shaking. I don't even know you. He looked at me like he'd been expecting this question, like he already had his answer prepared. But I know you, Cade. I've known you since that night 6 months ago. My heart stopped beating. 6 months ago. Exactly oh God, that alpha. The one-night stand I'd been trying desperately to forget. The stranger who'd seemed kind when my world was falling apart. This was, the baby's father. The memories were fragmented, too many drinks, an emotional breakdown, and someone who'd held me while I cried. But I'd run the next morning, terrified and ashamed of what I'd done. River, he said softly, finally introducing himself. My name is River. I repeated his name silently in my mind. River. The alpha who'd changed my life 6 months ago was standing in front of me now, having just canceled his own wedding. You knew it was me? I whispered, completely overwhelmed. I've been searching for you, he admitted, guilt clear in his eyes. Since the morning you left, but you vanished without a trace. Because I'd run away, terrified that he'd judge me, or worse, blame me for what happened. But now he was here, and he'd chosen. Leaving the church felt surreal. River's hand remained locked around mine as we walked through the exit, past clusters of guests still gossiping in hushed tones. Their stares felt like weapons, sharp, judgmental, cutting. I caught fragments of their whispers. Shameful. That pregnant boy. Homewrecker. I kept my head down, tugging my oversized shirt lower as if it could somehow make me invisible. But River squeezed my hand tighter, silently communicating that I wasn't alone in this. His car waited in the parking lot, sleek black metal and tinted windows, expensive in a way that made my stomach turn. He opened the passenger door for me, and I carefully lowered myself into the seat, my belly making every simple movement a challenge. River settled into the driver's seat and started the engine. The silence between us felt heavy, oppressive. Fresh air circulated through the vents, but I still couldn't breathe properly. My thoughts were colliding, fragmenting, trying to piece together impossible information. This was really him, the alpha I'd met in that hotel room 6 months ago, when my life had already been crumbling around me. I couldn't remember his face from that night. Too many drinks, too much pain, everything shrouded in darkness and desperation. But sitting beside him now in the daylight, studying his profile as he navigated through traffic, fragments of memory began surfacing. Those kind eyes, that gentle touch, the morning when I'd woken up in a panic and fled without saying a single word. You knew? My voice cracked. This entire time? River's hands tightened on the steering wheel as he maneuvered around slower traffic, his jaw clenching. Yes and no, he finally answered. I knew about you, the Omega, from that night. But I didn't know about, he gestured carefully toward my belly, the pregnancy. Not until I saw you sitting in that church today. Then why? Confusion swirled through me. Why cancel your wedding? If you didn't know about the baby? Because I recognized you instantly, he said firmly, glancing at me when we stopped at a red light. The moment I saw you, I understood that marrying someone else would be impossible. Not when the person I'd been desperately searching for was right there in front of me. Searching for. The words sounded strange, almost fictional. You were actually looking for me. Since that morning, he confirmed, guilt darkening his expression. I woke up alone. No name, no phone number, nothing to trace you by. I tried everything, checked hotel records, reviewed security footage, but you'd disappeared like smoke. By the time I found any leads, he paused, swallowing hard. Your situation had already become incredibly difficult. Difficult. What an inadequate word. I'd become homeless when my roommate discovered my pregnancy, a male omega carrying a child. He'd thrown me out immediately, disgusted and frightened by what I represented. I had no support system, no family I could call. Just this growing baby and me surviving day by day through shelters and Milo's occasional charity. You should have contacted me before today, I said, feeling tears threatening to spill. I blinked them back furiously. Before creating that spectacle, before destroying your wedding in front of all those people, that wedding never belonged to me. He interrupted, passion flooding his voice. My family arranged it for a business merger. I barely knew the woman, let alone loved her. I was going through with it because, he sighed deeply, because I'd convinced myself I'd never find you again. That maybe settling for a loveless arrangement was my destiny. I laughed, a sad, hollow sound that escaped before I could stop it. So what am I? Your escape route, your convenient excuse to avoid responsibility. River abruptly pulled the car to the side of the road and turned to face me completely. No, listen carefully, Cade. He cupped my face gently with both hands, forcing eye contact. You're not an excuse. You're the entire reason. The reason I want to fight. The reason I want to build something real. The words sounded romantic, like something from a movie script. But in real life, I was pregnant, a male omega that society had already labeled as worthless, exhausted and broken. People like me don't get fairy tale endings. We get abandoned, forgotten, erased. I don't need anyone's pity, I said, pushing his hands away, my voice trembling. I've been managing on my own. I'll continue managing. This isn't pity, Cade. His voice turned raw, desperate. That baby, it's mine too, correct? I nodded slowly, unable to construct a convincing lie. Yes. River's breath caught audibly. Then how can you expect me to walk away from you and our child? Our child. Hearing those words created a strange sensation in my chest. For the first time during this entire pregnancy, I wasn't completely alone. At that exact moment, as if responding to some cosmic timing, the baby kicked, sharp and sudden, right against my ribs. I gasped, automatically placing my hand over my belly. River's eyes widened when he saw my reaction. Was that the baby? He asked hesitantly. Yeah, I said softly. A kick. May I? He raised his hand halfway, clearly asking permission. I nodded, unable to form words. River slowly, almost reverently, placed his hand on my belly, his touch warm and incredibly careful. When the baby moved again, the expression that crossed his face, pure awe mixed with wonder and pain, was something I'd never witnessed on any alpha before, especially not directed at someone like me. I've already missed so much, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Please don't force me to miss everything else. In that moment, sitting in his expensive car with his hand resting on my belly and our baby moving beneath it, something inside me began to crack and shift. Maybe this was real. Maybe this alpha was genuinely different from what I'd expected. Maybe I actually deserved this chance at something better. The afternoon sun streamed through the windshield, warming my face. River's thumb traced gentle circles on my belly, and I found myself leaning into his touch despite every instinct screaming at me to protect myself. I built walls so high around my heart, convinced that no one would ever want a pregnant male omega with nothing to offer. But here he was, looking at me like I was something precious, something worth fighting for. I'm scared, I admitted quietly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I've been alone for so long. I don't know how to trust this. I understand, River said, his voice gentle. I'm not asking you to trust me completely right now. Just give me the opportunity to prove myself. Let me show you that this is real. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, and River's face lit up with wonder. Despite everything, the chaos, the uncertainty, the fear, I felt the smallest spark of hope beginning to kindle in my chest. River drove us away from the church, away from the whispers and judgment, toward a part of the city I rarely visited, where buildings stretched impossibly high and everything gleamed with wealth I'd never known. When we pulled into an underground parking garage, I realized we were heading to his home. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt endless, my anxiety building with each passing floor. When the doors finally opened directly into his apartment, I was completely unprepared for what I saw. The space was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the entire city, sunlight flooding across polished marble floors. Modern furniture that looked like it belonged in architecture magazines filled the open-concept living area. I stood awkwardly in my scuffed sneakers just inside the doorway, feeling absolutely microscopic. This place resembled a museum more than a home, and I definitely didn't belong here. "You really don't have to do this," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. The truth was, I had nowhere else to go. Getting a bed at the shelter required luck and perfect timing, and pregnant male omegas faced discrimination at every turn. I'd spent more than one night on the streets, wondering if my baby would be born homeless. "I want you here," River said firmly but gently. "You and the baby deserve safety, comfort, everything you've been denied." I scanned the immaculate living room. This was too much, too generous, too good to be true. But the baby kicked again, a reminder that pride doesn't fill empty stomachs. And I couldn't raise a child on the streets. "All right," I finally whispered, making the practical choice, but only temporarily, until I can arrange something stable for myself. River smiled, genuinely, warmly for the first time since I'd met him. "Fair enough, though there's no pressure to rush." He gave me a tour of the apartment, pointing out various rooms and amenities I'd only seen in movies. Then he showed me the guest bedroom he'd prepared, a comfortable bed with soft lighting, and an attached bathroom that was larger than some apartments I'd lived in. "This is your space," he explained. "Complete privacy. I won't enter without your explicit permission." That reassurance felt strange but deeply appreciated. I nodded, genuinely grateful for the boundary he was establishing. The following days settled into an unexpected rhythm. River left for work each morning. He apparently ran his family's architecture firm, but returned every evening to share dinner with me. He never pressured me, never made demands. Slowly, cautiously, I began to relax. He proved remarkably thoughtful in ways I hadn't anticipated. When he noticed my morning nausea, he started keeping ginger tea and crackers readily available. When my ankles swelled painfully, heating pads and a footrest appeared without me asking for them. He arranged appointments with specialists who treated male omega pregnancies, doctors I could never have afforded on my own. He stocked the kitchen with nutritious food, fresh produce, quality proteins, everything the baby needed. He even created a comfortable corner in the living room with a perfect reading chair positioned by the windows, where I could rest and watch the city below. The care he showed, the consideration, all without expecting anything in return. It confused me deeply. One evening, I was applying lotion to my belly, trying to prevent stretch marks, when River knocked softly on my door. "May I ask you something?" he said hesitantly. "Sure," I replied, setting down the lotion bottle. River sat carefully at the foot of my bed, maintaining respectful distance. "Why didn't you try to find me?" After that night, after discovering you were pregnant, I'd known this question would come eventually. I took a deep breath before answering. "Because I didn't think you'd care," I said honestly, meeting his eyes. "Male omegas like me, we're disposable to alphas like you. Good for one night, maybe. Fun and forgettable, but nothing serious. I didn't even know your name. And even if I had, what difference would it have made? You were obviously wealthy, powerful, successful. I was just a mistake that should never have happened." "You were never a mistake," River said intensely, leaning forward. "That night meant something to me. Talking with you, making you laugh, it felt right in a way nothing else had. But when I woke up, you were gone. No note, no trace. I spent months searching for you, Cade. Months." I studied his eyes, dark and achingly sincere. The truth lived there, real regret and genuine pain. I was terrified, I admitted, allowing my vulnerability to show, Scared you'd blame me for the pregnancy. That you'd accuse me of trapping you. Male omegas get called gold diggers, Campton. And at that time I was already drowning. My roommate had thrown me out when he learned about the baby. I had no money. Nowhere to go. Asking you for help felt impossible. River took my hand, his touch warm and grounding. I would never have blamed you. Never. Silence settled between us, comfortable despite its weight. Then River spoke softly. I wish you'd trusted me. But I understand why you couldn't. Society has been cruel to you in ways I'm only beginning to comprehend. Yes, I whispered. It has. That night marked a turning point. For the first time I fully believed him. And for the first time I allowed myself to imagine that maybe this could actually work. But the next morning shattered that fragile hope. I was in the kitchen attempting to make breakfast, actually feeling optimistic about the future, when the doorbell rang. River had already left for an early meeting, so I carefully opened the door. Scarlett stood there, his ex-fiancée. And she wasn't alone. Two stern-looking men in expensive suits flanked her, clearly lawyers carrying briefcases. Well, she said, her smile cold and sharp as broken glass. Here's the homewrecker himself. My stomach dropped. This wasn't going to end well. She pushed past me without invitation, her heels clicking sharply against the marble as her lawyers followed. I stood frozen in the doorway, suddenly acutely aware of my bare feet, messy hair, and visible pregnancy. Everything about her screamed wealth and power. Designer clothes, perfect makeup, the confidence of someone who'd never known rejection. We need to talk, Scarlett announced, settling onto River's couch like she owned it. About your immediate future. Or rather, your lack of one here. The lawyers opened their briefcases with synchronized precision, pulling out thick documents. My hands instinctively moved to protect my belly as fear coursed through me. Whatever was about to happen, I knew it wouldn't be good. The lawyers began spreading documents across River's coffee table with practiced efficiency, their movements synchronized like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Scarlett perched on the edge of the sofa, her posture perfect, her expression a mask of calculated sympathy that didn't reach her eyes. I remained standing near the kitchen entrance, one hand protectively cradling my belly, feeling completely out of my depth. These are straightforward, one of the lawyers said, his voice professionally neutral. A non-disclosure agreement, a settlement offer, and a release form absolving all parties of future claims. I stared at the papers, the legal terminology swimming before my eyes. I don't understand what this means. It means, Scarlett said, her tone dripping with false sweetness, that you take the money, sign away any claim to River or his assets, and disappear quietly. Everyone wins. You get financial security for your child, and River avoids a messy public scandal that could destroy his family's business reputation. The amount on the settlement check made my breath catch. It was more money than I'd seen in my entire life. Enough to raise my baby comfortably, to never worry about rent or food again. Enough to make all my problems disappear. This seems excessive, I said quietly, suspicion creeping into my voice. Why offer so much just to make me leave? The second lawyer adjusted his glasses. Mr. River's family has significant business interests. The cancelled wedding has already created complications with several key partnerships. Your continued presence exacerbates those complications. Scarlett stood, smoothing her designer skirt. Think about your baby, Cade. River's lifestyle isn't stable right now. His family is furious. They'll make your life miserable if you stay. But with this settlement, you could start fresh somewhere new. Give your child a real chance. She made it sound so reasonable, so practical. And part of me, the part that had spent months terrified and alone, wanted desperately to believe her. To take the money and run, to protect myself from inevitable heartbreak. Can I have time to think about it? I asked, hating how weak my voice sounded. Of course, Scarlett said smoothly. But not too long. The offer expires in 48 hours. After that, things become significantly more complicated for everyone involved. The lawyers began packing their documents, clearly considering the meeting successful. Scarlett retrieved her coat, throwing it over her shoulders with practiced elegance. She paused at the door, looking back at me with something that might have been genuine concern if I didn't know better. You seem like a decent person, Cade. You're just in an impossible situation. Take the money. Start over, It's what's best for everyone, especially your baby. After they left, the apartment felt suffocatingly quiet. I sank onto the sofa where Scarlett had been sitting, the leather still warm from her presence. The documents remained spread across the table, that enormous check sitting on top like a temptation from a fairy tale. Pick me, it seemed to whisper. End all your suffering. Choose security. I picked up the check, studying the zeros. This money could change everything. I'd never have to return to that shelter. Never have to wonder if my baby would be born homeless. I could find a small apartment somewhere quiet, maybe take online classes, build an actual life, but it would mean leaving River, walking away from whatever this fragile thing between us was becoming. Could I do that? Should I? My hands trembled as I set the check down. The baby kicked, a sharp jab against my ribs, as if offering an opinion. I pressed my palm against the movement, feeling tears building behind my eyes. I don't know what to do, I whispered to my unborn child. I don't know what's right anymore. The apartment door opened suddenly, making me jump. River stepped inside, his expression shifting from surprise to concern when he saw me crying on his sofa. Cade? What happened? He crossed the room quickly, kneeling in front of me. Why are you upset? I gestured helplessly at the documents. Scarlett was here, with lawyers. They made an offer. River's jaw tightened as he scanned the papers, his eyes growing darker with each page. When he reached the settlement check, his hand crumpled it slightly. She had no right to come here. No right pressure you like this. She said your family is angry, I said, my voice breaking. That I'm ruining your business relationships. That I'm making everything worse. My family doesn't dictate my choices, River said firmly, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. The truth behind Scarlett's words. But she's right, isn't she? I pressed, needing honesty more than comfort. Your life was stable before I appeared. Now everything's falling apart. River set the papers aside and took both my hands in his. My life was empty before you appeared. Stable, yes. Comfortable, but completely hollow. I was going to marry someone I didn't love to please people who don't actually care about my happiness. That money could give the baby everything, I said, my practical side warring with my emotions. Security, stability, a real home. You think I can't provide those things? River interrupted, something hurt flashing in his eyes. That's not what I meant, I said quickly. I don't want to be the reason you lose everything. Your family, your business, your reputation. That's too much weight for anyone to carry. River stood abruptly, pacing to the windows. The afternoon sun silhouetted his frame, making it impossible to read his expression. Do you want to leave? He asked quietly. Is that what you're trying to tell me? I don't know what I want, I admitted honestly. I'm scared, River. Scared that this is too good to be real. Scared that I'm going to wake up and find out this was all some elaborate mistake. Scared that staying will destroy you, and scared that leaving will destroy me. He turned back to face me, and I could see the raw emotion in his eyes. Then let me make this simple. I'm choosing you. Consciously, deliberately choosing you and our baby over everything else. My family's approval, business partnerships, social standing, none of it matters if I lose you. You barely know me, I whispered. I know enough, he said, crossing back to kneel before me again. I know you're brave enough to face the world alone. I know you put our baby's needs before your own pride. I know you make me want to be better than I am. That's more than enough. The baby kicked again, harder this time, and River's hand instinctively moved to my belly. We sat like that for a long moment, his palm warm against my shirt, both of us feeling our child move beneath the surface. What if your family never accepts me? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. What if they make your life miserable because of this choice? Then they'll learn to live with disappointment, River said simply. You and this baby are my family now. That's what matters. I wanted to believe him. Every part of me ached to trust that this could actually work, that fairy tales sometimes did come true for people like me. But life had taught me to expect disappointment, to protect myself from inevitable pain. I need time, I said finally. Time to think clearly without lawyers and ultimatums and pressure. Can you give me that? River stood, pulling me gently to my feet. Take all the time you need. Just promise me one thing. Don't make this decision based on fear. Make it based on what you actually want. What did I want? The question haunted me as River led me to my bedroom, encouraging me to rest. I lay on the comfortable bed, one hand on my belly, staring at the ceiling and trying to untangle the mess of emotions knotted in my chest. I wanted my baby to be safe. I wanted to stop running, stop surviving, and actually start living. I wanted to believe that someone could genuinely care about me without ulterior motives. And terrifyingly, impossibly, I wanted River. But wanting something and deserving it were two entirely different things. The question was, which truth would I choose to believe? I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that settlement check, those zeros burning into my retinas like accusation and salvation combined. By morning, I'd made a decision, though I wasn't entirely certain it was the right one. I found River in the kitchen, already dressed for work, preparing breakfast with careful concentration. "I'm not taking the money," I said without preamble, his hands stilled on the coffee pot. "You're certain?" "No," I admitted. "I'm terrified. But I'm more terrified of spending the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if I'd stayed." River set down the pot and crossed to me, his expression a mixture of relief and something deeper. "Thank you for trusting me. Don't make me regret it," I said, trying for lightness despite the gravity of the moment. The next few weeks settled into an unexpected rhythm. River worked from home more frequently, his laptop stationed at the dining table where he could see me reading or resting on the sofa. We developed small rituals: morning tea together, afternoon walks when I felt up to it, evening conversations that stretched long into the night. Gradually my walls began crumbling, piece by cautious piece. One afternoon I was folding laundry, insisting I needed to contribute somehow, when River's phone rang. I heard him answer in his office, his voice initially professional, then growing progressively tenser. When he emerged 20 minutes later, his expression was carefully neutral. But I'd learned to read the tension in his shoulders. "That was my father," he said simply. My hands stilled on the towel I'd been folding. "What did he say?" River sat beside me, taking the towel and setting it aside. "He wants to meet you. Officially. He's hosting a family dinner this weekend and insists we both attend." Panic fluttered in my chest. "Is that a good idea? I mean, they already hate me for ruining the wedding." "They don't know you," River interrupted gently. "That's the problem. You're just an abstract concept to them, a complication in their business plans. Meeting you, seeing you as a real person, might change their perspective. Or it might make everything worse," I said realistically. "I'm not exactly what wealthy families hope their sons will bring home." "You're carrying my child," River said firmly. "That makes you family whether they acknowledge it or not. And I want them to know you, to see what I see." What did he see? I wanted to ask but couldn't quite find the courage. Instead, I focused on practical concerns. "I don't have anything appropriate to wear to a formal family dinner." River's expression softened. "We can fix that. Tomorrow we'll go shopping. My treat, and before you argue, consider it an investment in making a good impression." Shopping with River proved unexpectedly enjoyable. He had impeccable taste, steering me toward clothes that fit my changing body while still looking presentable. In the dressing room, studying my reflection in a dark blue sweater that somehow made me look almost elegant despite my swollen belly, I felt a strange flutter of hope. Maybe I could do this. Maybe I could fit into his world after all. The night of the dinner arrived too quickly. I changed clothes 4 times, each outfit feeling more inadequate than the last, before River gently intervened. "You look perfect," he assured me, straightening my collar. "Just be yourself. That's all I'm asking." His father's house was even more intimidating than River's penthouse. A sprawling estate with manicured gardens and a driveway that seemed to stretch forever. My hands were sweating by the time we reached the front door, and River squeezed my fingers reassuringly. "Remember, we can leave whenever you want," he murmured. "Just say the word." The door opened before we could knock, revealing an older man with River's same dark eyes and commanding presence. His gaze swept over me, lingering on my belly, his expression unreadable. "Father," River said formally. "This is Cade." "Mr. Sullivan," I said, extending my hand nervously. "Thank you for inviting me." He shook my hand briefly, his grip firm. "Dinner is ready. We're waiting in the dining room." The dining room contained more people than I'd expected. River's mother, elegantly dressed and coolly assessing 2 older siblings I hadn't known existed, and several others who were introduced quickly as aunts, uncles, and business associates. I felt every eye tracking my movement as River pulled out my chair, sitting close enough that our arms touched. Dinner began with excruciating formality. Conversation flowed around me. Business mergers, stock portfolios, social events I'd never heard of. I picked at my food, hyper-aware of every movement, every breath. River's hand found mine under the table, thumb stroking reassuringly across my knuckles. "So, Cade," River's mother finally addressed me directly, her tone pleasant but sharp. "River mentioned you're between jobs currently. Translation, you're unemployed and financially dependent on my son." I swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am. My previous situation became complicated when I learned about the pregnancy. Male omega pregnancies require careful monitoring, and my former employer wasn't accommodating." "How convenient that River was available to provide support," she said. "The implication clear." "Mother," River said warningly. "I'm simply making conversation," she said innocently. Surely Cade doesn't mind answering basic questions about his background. What followed was 20 minutes of polite interrogation disguised as interest. Questions about my family, non-existent. My education, incomplete. My plans for the future, uncertain. Each answer felt like a failure. Proof that I didn't belong in this world of wealth and privilege. Finally, River's father set down his wine glass with deliberate precision. "Let's address the elephant in the room. You're carrying my grandchild, which creates certain obligations. River seems determined to pursue this relationship despite its complications. What are your intentions?" Every eye turned to me. I felt River tense beside me, ready to intervene, but I placed my hand on his arm. If I was going to be part of his life, I needed to fight my own battles. "My intention," I said clearly, "is to raise my child in a stable, loving environment. I never asked River for anything except the chance to prove I'm not what everyone assumes I am. I understand you had different plans for his future, and I'm sorry those plans were disrupted. But I won't apologize for existing, or for choosing to keep my baby, or for accepting River's help when I had nowhere else to turn." Silence followed my words. River's hand found mine above the table this time, our fingers interlacing publicly. "Well," River's mother said finally, "at least you're honest. That's all I know how to be," I said quietly. The tension didn't disappear entirely, but it shifted somehow. Conversation resumed, slightly less hostile than before. River's older sister asked about my due date, showing what seemed like genuine interest. His father discussed setting up a trust fund for the baby, speaking around me rather than to me, but acknowledging the child's existence nonetheless. When we finally left hours later, I was exhausted but oddly hopeful. River drove us home in comfortable silence, his hand occasionally reaching over to squeeze mine. "You were incredible," he said finally. "Standing up to my father like that, I've never seen anyone do that successfully." "I probably ruined everything," I said, but without real conviction. "You were authentic," River corrected. "That's what matters. They might not love you yet, but they respect you. That's a start." Back at the penthouse, I collapsed onto the sofa, every muscle aching. River sat beside me, lifting my swollen feet into his lap and beginning to massage them gently. The intimacy of the gesture, the casual comfort of it made my throat tight. "Thank you," I said softly, "for defending me, for believing in me. Always," River promised, his hands working magic on my aching ankles. "That's what family does." Family. The word settled around us like a blanket, warm and tentative and impossibly precious. Maybe, just maybe, I was starting to believe in possibilities again. 3 weeks after the dinner with River's family, I woke to sharp cramping that stole my breath. For a moment I lay perfectly still, hoping it was nothing, just another false alarm. But when the pain intensified, radiating through my lower back and abdomen, I knew something was wrong. "River," I called, my voice tight with fear. He appeared in my doorway within seconds, still in his pajama pants, hair disheveled from sleep. One look at my face had him moving. "Hospital. Now." The emergency room was a blur of bright lights and urgent voices. A nurse helped me onto a gurney while another attached monitors, their beeping filling the sterile air. River stayed close, one hand gripping mine, his face pale beneath the fluorescent glare. "How far along are you?" a doctor asked, appearing with a tablet and efficient movements. 28 weeks, I managed between contractions. Her expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "We need to run tests immediately." Male omega pregnancies at this stage are particularly vulnerable to premature labor. The next hours stretched into eternity. They drew blood, performed ultrasounds, monitored contractions that thankfully began spacing out rather than intensifying. River never left, even when nurses tried to usher him to the waiting area. He simply held my hand tighter and refused to move. "Your baby is showing signs of stress," the doctor explained eventually, her tone professional but kind. "We've managed to stop active labor for now, but this is a serious warning sign. You'll need complete bed rest for the remainder of your pregnancy. No stress, no physical exertion, constant monitoring. Will the baby be okay?" I asked, the question barely making it past the fear choking my throat. "If you follow instructions exactly, your chances of carrying to term are good," she said. "But any deviation from the prescribed rest could trigger premature labor again. Male omega bodies aren't designed for pregnancy. You're already fighting against biology. We need to minimize every possible risk." They kept me overnight for observation. River dozed fitfully in the chair beside my bed, jerking awake at every beep of the monitors, every small sound I made. Watching him, this powerful alpha reduced to anxious protector, something in my chest cracked open. "You should go home," I whispered when he woke for the third time. "Get actual sleep." "Not happening," he said simply, reaching for my hand again. "I'm staying right here." By morning the contractions had stopped completely and my vitals had stabilized. The doctor approved my discharge with stern warnings and a prescription list longer than my arm. River listened intently to every instruction, asking clarifying questions, ensuring he understood exactly what I needed. Back at the penthouse, everything changed. River transformed the living room into a recovery space. A hospital bed he'd had delivered while I was sleeping, positioned near the windows for natural light. Pillows and blankets were arranged precisely for maximum comfort. A small table held medications, water, and healthy snacks within easy reach. "This is too much," I protested weakly. "This is exactly enough," River countered, helping me settle into the bed. "The doctor said complete rest. That's what you're getting." The following days established a new routine. River worked from a desk he'd set up in the living room, staying close enough to help if I needed anything. He brought meals, helped me to the bathroom, read to the baby every evening with his hand on my belly. The intimacy of it, the vulnerability of being completely dependent on someone terrified and comforted me in equal measure. One afternoon when rain drummed against the windows and gray light filled the room, River set aside his laptop and came to sit beside my bed. "I need to tell you something," he said, his expression serious. "My family has agreed to a truce. My father called this morning. They want to help with the baby, financially at least, set up a trust fund, cover medical expenses, ensure our child has every advantage. That's good, right?" I said uncertainly. "It is," River confirmed, "but there's a condition. They want us to marry. Make everything official and legitimate in their eyes." My breath caught. "You told them no?" "Actually," River said slowly, "I told them I'd discuss it with you first, because this is your decision as much as mine." I stared at him, searching for any sign of coercion or obligation. "You don't have to marry me because your family demands it." "I know," he said quietly, "but maybe I want to marry you because I choose to." The words hung between us, heavy with implication. Outside, thunder rumbled, and the baby kicked as if offering commentary. "We barely know each other," I whispered. The same argument I'd made before, but weaker now. "I know you take your tea with honey and no sugar," River said. "I know you talk to the baby when you think no one's listening. I know you cry during sappy commercials but pretend it's just hormones. I know you're stronger than anyone I've ever met, and braver than you believe. What else do I need to know?" Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. "I'm scared this is temporary, that you'll wake up one day and realize you made a mistake choosing me." River leaned forward, wiping my tears with gentle thumbs. "The only mistake I've made was wasting years on a life that didn't matter. You matter, Cade. This baby matters. Everything else is just noise. Your family will never fully accept me," I said, needing him to understand the reality. "I'll always be the Omega who disrupted their plans." "Then they'll learn to live with disappointment," River said firmly. "I'm not asking you to marry me for them. I'm asking because I can't imagine my future without you in it." The baby kicked again, harder, and we both looked down at my belly. River's hand joined mine there, our fingers overlapping on the curve where our child grew. Ask me after the baby comes, I said finally. When we're both thinking clearly and not terrified about premature labor. Ask me then and I'll give you a real answer. River nodded slowly, a small smile playing at his lips. That's fair, but I'm warning you now. My answer won't change. The weeks that followed were simultaneously the longest and shortest of my life. Bed rest was maddening, but River made it bearable. He brought books, helped me with online classes I'd tentatively started, even taught me basic architecture principles during his lunch breaks. Slowly, without my quite realizing when it happened, the penthouse stopped feeling like his space and started feeling like ours. When my water broke at 34 weeks, early but viable, River had us at the hospital within minutes. Labor was intense, painful in ways I hadn't imagined possible. Male omega deliveries carried risks that had doctors hovering, monitors beeping urgently, medical staff moving with practiced efficiency. But River was there through all of it, letting me grip his hand hard enough to bruise, whispering encouragement when I wanted to give up, crying unashamedly when our son finally entered the world. Small but breathing, screaming his arrival with impressive volume. He's perfect, River choked out as they placed Knox on my chest. Absolutely perfect. Looking down at my son, our son, with River's arm around my shoulders and joy flooding through every exhausted cell in my body. I finally understood what home felt like. A month later, when Knox was thriving and I'd recovered enough to think beyond diapers and feeding schedules, River asked again. This time, I didn't hesitate. Yes. I said simply. Yes. I'll marry you, because some fairy tales I'd learned were real after all.